In William Shakespeare's Hamlet, the play's namesake and protagonist says that the purpose of putting on a play is to, quote, hold as it were the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time his form and pressure. Well, this summer, the Ithaca Shakespeare Company is looking to hold that mirror up to nature in nature itself. As they have for a number of years, they're performing the works of Shakespeare in the green setting of the Cornell plantations. And here to talk about what it takes to bring the bard outdoors is Michael Donato of the Ithaca Shakespeare Company. He is a member of their board of directors and one of their regular cast members. Michael, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
So, Shakespeare and the Plantations, how did these shows get started in the first place?
They were the brainchild of our artistic director named Stephen Ponton. And over a decade ago, he got together local actors and people who are also active in other ways in the theater community to put on shows in the Cornell plantations. And they were known then as the Red Bull Players, and later became the Ithaca Shakespeare Company. And we've been putting on shows in the plantations for over a decade now. They've grown in scope from small casts and audiences in the dozens to now we have large full casts as Shakespeare intended them, and the shows are attended every summer by thousands.
So this is something that's very much kind of a part of the Ithaca Shakespeare Company's very foundation.
Yes, this is the primary thing that we do every year is the summer shows. We do 2 shows in repertory. So this year it's Hamlet, as you've mentioned, and also Love's Labour's Lost. And I'll discuss the pairing in a second if you like. We also do a winter show. Last year we did The Tempest. The year before that, The Merchant of Venice. The year before that, Twelfth Night. And we're branching out. We're going to do a fall show also, where we're doing something with a bit of a twist. The shows I told you about are the traditional shows. In the fall, we're going to do something a little more off the beaten path. It's Julius Caesar, which is, traditional also. But the twist is that it's with an all-female cast.
Huh.
Yes.
Huh.
And the idea isn't to change it because it's a female cast. The idea is actually to showcase just how strong the women actors can be, and they can play these traditionally very big, tough roles. Mm-hmm. And so we're excited about that.
Yeah. So if we think about performing Shakespeare in this kind of natural setting, people may have heard about Shakespeare in Central Park in the summer. But is there kind of this larger tradition of doing this kind of performance in this kind of setting?
Yes, there is. Actually, it goes all the way back to Shakespeare himself. The Globe Theater, which was the theater that they eventually built in Stratford-on-Avon to present Shakespeare's plays by Shakespeare's company, was a partially enclosed structure where the audience had coverage, but the stage was partly open in the round, and so you performed into the elements. And there's been a tradition since over hundreds of years that Shakespeare is performed sometimes indoors, but sometimes out in the elements, and for what's good and ill about that. Yeah.
You mentioned that these 2 plays in particular, Hamlet and Love's Labour's Lost, were kind of paired together for a particular reason. I mean, to me, first hearing about these, I've read Hamlet, but this other piece is one that I'm not too familiar with. Can you explain kind of how that pairing for this summer's shows came about?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing accidental about it. The idea is that they're thought of as like the yin and the yang for each other. Hamlet is Shakespeare's towering, dark, complex masterpiece with all these huge negative emotions. And spoiler alert for those of you who haven't read the most famous play in Western literature, nearly everybody dies. Now, Love's Labour's Lost is the opposite. It is one of the lightest, frothiest, most full of fun and romping romance and wordplay of anything that Shakespeare wrote. Now, in Hamlet, there is some light elements of love stories and loyalties and things of that nature that are positive, mostly unrequited love, but they're there. And in Love's Labour's Lost, there are some dark elements as well. It's much less known for Hamlet, but to the extent that it's known that it has a dark ending, mm-hmm. Despite all the terrific fun that comes in it. So we thought of them as a nice balance of each other. That one's mostly light, one's mostly dark. Neither is everything in one direction or the other, almost like a meal pairing of like putting the right wine with a food, or after you have a heavy, rich, spicy meal, you want a really fun, frothy, sweet dessert. So they're intended to be seen together as a pairing.
And you mentioned that this kind of performance setting has been part of Shakespeare's work since the very beginning, and the Globe Theater, the theater in the round. But how does it actually work putting on a production in the Cornell plantations? I mean, what are some of the particular challenges that the company faces just with, production values? There's no lighting in the trees, I'm assuming.
Right. An insightful question, and thank you for giving me the chance to both whine and feel good about what we do. The phrase literally from the ground up is accurate. We start with the right ground, all right? Thank you to the Cornell Plantations. They give us a beautiful site. It's in the Jackson Grove area of the Arboretum. Those of you who know Flat Rocks, you come in from that entrance near Fall Creek, and we're just up the hill on the right from that entrance. And it's a beautiful open site with gently sloping meadows, so we have sort of a natural raked seating, so everybody gets a wonderful view. And the area is ringed with these big towering trees, so you get this sort of magical sense of being part of nature, protected from it, and you get the beautiful sunshine. And unlike prior years, there's nowhere that you get direct sunlight in your eyes during the shows because now the sun is to the west. We had to think about such things. The lighting, as you say, we have no help from anything artificial. There's no electricity at the site. So we have to time the shows to fit within the daylight that there is between 6 and roughly 9. And with Shakespeare, that means cutting it down. And that's good news. Those of you who think Shakespeare is long and boring and all, not the way we do it. What we do is we strive to create a very emotive effect. This is not like reading the play and kind of snoozing off every once in a while and waking up and remembering it. This is to bring all these, just huge, angry, loving, passionate, wonderful, fun, silly, whatever people out there live on the stage, right there in front of you, and to create an emotive experience. To do that, as you said, we start from the ground up. It's like camping, okay? If we don't bring it, we don't have it. We build our own set in the open ground. We bring our own things for the backstage, like a tent to hide ourselves from the rain, whatever. We bring a little generator just to operate the microphones so that people who are seated farther away can hear us. We sometimes do get a few hundred people at a show, and so the people up front hear the natural voices, the people farther back hear the amplified voices, and everybody says they get a crystal clear experience. But yeah, that's it. All those costumes you see, all the swords that we're carrying, all the armor that we wear, etc., we carry it in and we carry it back out again.
I'm interested in what you said about kind of tailoring these productions to the audience, right, who may not be necessarily a theater-going audience year-round. I can imagine these shows attract a different segment of the population. So are these plays kind of performed in their original format? Are they kind of edited or cut down, truncated at all to kind of fit the setting?
Yes, they are. I'm going to paraphrase our wonderful artistic director when he says, some people think that 4 hours of a Shakespeare play is better than 2 hours of a Shakespeare play. I am not one of them. Neither am I. And the idea is the artistic director takes the original play and then trims out of it those things that are, say, archaic. Like, for example, this year we cut out a bunch of Latin puns. If that's going to disappoint anyone, I'm sorry, but all the puns in Latin have been taken out. And historical references that would miss a modern audience, turns of the phrase that are unfamiliar, etc. And we trim it down to those things that are essential to the character and that move the story along so that you get the speed and the emotive impact of a more modern play, but with all the archaic language and all the storyline coming through. So don't worry, you'll still hear, to be or not to be, and this too solid flesh, etc. All the things you're expecting to hear will be there, and all the things that you used to scratch your head about will not. Okay.
So I'm just imagining maybe the kind of reaction that this person who would be interested in seeing a 4-hour Shakespeare play, maybe if you want to call them a purist, would have to maybe seeing a production like this that has the Latin puns taken out. Would you personally feel, or maybe does the company feel that changing the plays like this kind of fundamentally changes what you're performing?
No. I'll answer that in a few different ways. First off, the plays have been edited for hundreds of years. The idea that there's this pure sense of one must do the folio version and not change a word of it, yes, there are people who believe that, but they are few and far between. Typically, they've been modified. In fact, Shakespeare published different versions of the same plays, including Hamlet. There's a debate of how many he actually authorized, but there's something on the order of 3 or 4 that he moved things around and added and subtracted and so forth. That's part of the benefit. We don't do any of that crazy stuff like, well, we're going to set it in 1920s Los Angeles because that would, and we're going to put some people in Nazi costumes. And no, we don't do any of that stuff. We stay true to it. So that's one thing, is there's a history of changing it, and we change it very little. The second thing is that we do have those purists who come to the shows, people who are real lovers of Shakespeare, people who are professors of English at the universities nearby and so forth, and they love what we do, and they come and they say so. They, and they're very acutely aware of, if I want to read all the words, I can read the play, but I want to see these people come to life, and you bring them to life. So I think we're doing all right. May not be for everybody, but it's for a lot of people. Happy to say, as I said, attendance has grown. We tend to get over 4,000 a year for the summer shows, and they come from all over. About half the states in the United States, several foreign countries. I don't think anybody's getting on an airplane to see us, don't get me wrong, but they come to Ithaca for whatever reasons, and we are one of the things that they make a point of doing while they're enjoying their summer in Ithaca. So we're very gratified by that.
Mm-hmm. So what would you maybe say someone attending one of these plays would get out of coming and seeing the Ithaca Shakespeare Company put on kind of their take on Hamlet? You mentioned, you're not, this isn't Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, we're not modernizing it to that point. But for maybe someone who is still scared off by Shakespeare, what would you maybe say to them to convince them to come out and see a show?
Oh, what a great question. This is about the friendliest Shakespeare show for the non-devotee, for the person who is not absorbed Shakespeare, that you're going to find. We do what we like to think is the best combination of the old and then more modernized, in the sense that we keep what language we trim out is out, but what stays in is the original. And we work very hard to not only articulate it clearly so people can hear us, but act it out such that everybody enjoys, they get it. Some of our best audience members are children. I can't imagine they understand more than half the words that they're hearing, but they are so riveted on the story, and they're laughing at the jokes, and they're getting excited about the dramatic parts. So the idea is you will see authentic period costumes, the right language, and very, very spirited, energetic performances where we're trying to create three-dimensional live people out there in front of you. And so you'll get a theater experience. You won't get some dry academic experience. The whole idea is to bring about the emotive impact.
Mm-hmm. And thinking of your role not only as a member of the board of directors, but as an actor in this setting, does performing in this kind of setting change the experience for you?
Terrifically, yes. I've done roles, larger roles in both the outdoor productions and the indoor productions, and they are completely different in terms of, well, not completely, but they are very different in terms of preparation and presentation. The indoor shows tend to be more intimate, smaller crowds, and closer to the audience, and we have control over things. You know exactly what your light's going to be. You know exactly when you're going to walk out there and when you're not. And it has not yet rained indoors, right? Outdoors, we have a number of challenges we don't have indoors, but we are very accustomed to it, having done it for years, and so it works. But first is we have to deal with the weather. People always ask us, what do you do when it rains? And the answer is we get wet, okay? The only time we stop a show is if it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. If there's lightning, if there's extreme winds, something like that. When the weather gets bad, we'll take a break and we'll say, look, this is Ithaca. You don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes, right? And so we'll take a break and we'll say, go sit in your cars, or people sit under their umbrellas or whatever. And when the storm passes through, then we pick up the show again. I mentioned we have to trim the plays somewhat because we only have so much sunlight. We have to speak loudly because it's a big open space, and so we do that. And we have the microphones, as I said, to get it out further. But you get a magic outdoors that you don't get indoors. I mean, no knock on the indoor spaces. We are in the Fall Creek Theater, and most recently we've been in the Hangar Theater. So thanks to our partner, the Hangar, for helping to make that possible. And they're great spaces, and they they make it as good an indoor experience as you can get. But there's something special about being outdoors. People bring, their picnic blanket and a bottle of wine and, some food and that sort of thing, and they make a whole event of it. And we encourage that, and that's part of what makes being in the outdoors special.
And Michael, if people wanted to get more information about this, maybe just really quickly, where can they do that about what the Shakespeare Company is doing this summer?
Right. The primary source of information about us is online. It's ithacashakespeare.org. .org, not .com, and that's where you find out what shows we've done, which shows are coming up, how to get tickets, all that sort of stuff is on the website. And there's also been articles about us in the Ithaca Journal and the Ithaca Times, so you can look it up in their archives also.